Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is amongst one of the most famous YouTubers, and most of his YouTube videos we come across them day to day on our day to day lives. And most of them we see them in short forms of shorts and other type of clips where they are mostly very informative, where he gets to interview a lot of people and is able to talk to even higher people like Elon Musk, like Jordan Peterson, people which have high class and have a lot of meaning to the society. So today I'll be telling you how this man was able to come up to be able to do this particular interview and how his career grew to become this particular personality which we know him today, which he has a podcast which interviews a lot of people, where the podcast can even last to 3 hours interviewing one particular person, and he has interviewed more than 1,000 people, and he has done more than 1,000 episodes. So I'll be telling you about the story of Joe Rogan and how he was able to be this so big, because everybody, as we know, it starts from a small place, and that was the same issue to Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan was talking about and saying that when he was releasing his first podcast, it got a number of 200 views. And 200 views, just remember, this is when also he was still famous, because he started it around the year of 2009. He was still famous, but he used to get 200 views, and not so many people were watching his podcast. But later on in the years, it got so famous until today, which we know it as the biggest podcast around the internet, and it gathers almost more than 1 billion views every year. So today's story is going to be about Joe Rogan, and also Joe Rogan has is a person which has done a lot of things, not only his podcast, but you have seen Joe Rogan in other places like the UFC and also other places which I'll be telling you, where Joe Rogan used to be an actor. And there's a particular show which I didn't know that it was Joe Rogan, but recently I knew it was Joe Rogan hosting that show. And that show was it was a hit show during the years of 2000 to 2006 over there. It was the number one hit show. Most of the people used to like this particular show. So Joe Rogan's story starts when at the age of 16 over there, where he was working at a construction company for his father. And this particular construction company, it wasn't the dream of Joe Rogan, because one thing Joe Rogan disliked is he didn't like the normal office environment where everybody goes to the office at 8 a.m. and gets out at 4 a.m. He didn't find it very familiar with this particular environment. So he sorted for a new career, although his stepfather was an architect, and his stepfather is the one who introduced him to the construction business. He didn't like this thing in particular. So one thing also which led him to have to shift his particular role to another career is when he was in high school, where he got into a fight with a particular boy, and this boy slammed Joe Rogan to the bench and almost punched Joe Rogan. And that's when now Joe Rogan started becoming very curious about fighting and started looking for classes where he could be able to learn fighting. And that's when he got himself into the classes of karate, and he was a very good karate student. And that's when now Joe Rogan shifted from the construction business to doing karate, and also he became a professional in the karate business, where he was able to win championship at the age of 19, and he won so many several championship because he was a very good fighter in karate. So later on in the years, he used to said this time was during that 1980s over there. And that's when now Joe Rogan now decided to venture out to a new career, because one of the things which his friends used to tell him, where they used to go train karate with, they used to tell Joe Rogan that he was very funny, because most of the time Joe Rogan used to make jokes just to release the tension which was with them, because when they go to fight, they had so many tension in them when they wanted to fight. So Joe Rogan will just release some jokes to ease the tension and to just raise up their spirit. And that's when now his friends told Joe Rogan that he has a talent and he should now try to be a comedian. And that's when now Joe Rogan now decided to be a comedian, because karate during that time, it was a very risky business. And also Joe Rogan had ventured into kickboxing, and this time the whole his beliefs of karate had started going down, because when he went to kickboxing, he saw that this particular venture and also this particular martial art was completely different, because he used to learn new things, and also the techniques which he used in karate, so that they were not working in kickboxing. And kickboxing was a little bit more lethal than karate. So uh, Joe Rogan now started being losing hope on karate, and also losing that strength which he had believed in karate, because he saw that karate was everything until he met kickboxing. So when he started kickboxing, he didn't go kickboxing a lot of time, because he was afraid that he will one day injure his head, or get a injury which will lead him later in his life to regret. So that's when now Joe Rogan started opting for new careers, and that's when now he found the career of comedy. And now it was during the time of 1988 over there. Joe Rogan was looking for a new career, and that's when now he started going to do stand up comedies in different bars and different locations. And that's but his first initials of doing the stand-up comedies, he wasn't very good at it. Many people didn't like his style, and his style mostly consisted of vulgar languages, where it included not very appropriate language for kids underage. And that's now when Joe Rogan got opportunities to perform in clubs, and also special parties of people, private parties of people. And that time was during the 1988 to 1994 over there. And during this period of time, Joe Rogan became even more famous, because he perfected his art in comedy. And there are so many clips on the internet where Joe Rogan is seen performing in comedies. That's when now, in the year of 1994, Joe Rogan now was able to get and also be featured in MTV, where he was able to have a show, where this show he was doing the show. It was a comedy show, where this show would last for around half an hour. It used to be called Half an Hour Comedy Hour. And that was the name of that particular MTV comedy show. And Joe Rogan did well in this particular comedy show, and it brought a lot of publicity to him. And during this time, Joe Rogan said that this was just a means of him getting to his career. And also, I told these other things which he was doing, they were just a thing where he will be able to pay his bills. His bills were the main agenda, and also if he just got a little job where it will be able to help him pay the bills, he can be able to hold on to it. And comedy was one of it. And later on, he found acting in MTV, where he got into that particular show. After getting into that particular show during the 1994s over there, that's when now he started even becoming more public known, and he started acting for other TV shows. And one TV shows he acted for 94 episodes, and the other TV show he acted around, I think it was 140 episodes. So Joe Rogan was very famous, and not so very famous, but he was a little bit famous, and many people started knowing that this boy has a career in acting, and also he is a good comedian. That's when now, in the years of 1995 to 1996 over there, the acting career started dimming down. And also Joe Rogan didn't like the acting career, because his main agenda and also his main vision was the comedy, because comedy earned him a lot of money, more than even acting. And also he saw in the long run that comedy will last longer than acting. So during the 1995 over there, 1996, the acting career wasn't going so well, and also the number of TV shows which he was being called to act was getting slimmer. And that's when now Joe Rogan manager, he used to know a particular person in the UFC, an organizer in the UFC. So the manager talked to this organizer in the UFC and asked him if Joe Rogan could be one of their commentator and also an interviewer in the UFC. And during this time, the UFC UFC was getting bigger, and also it was getting larger numbers, but it wasn't so big like the UFC which we know today. And that's when now Joe Rogan got the opportunity to be among the one of the interviewers and also the commentators. And one of his most famous clips is he says that UFC is the new type of sports, and it is the sports where many people would like to watch and also be interested in, because UFC is not like boxing. Boxing is where two grown men decide to fight, but they only limit themselves to only using hands. But UFC, you have a load pack of arsenals where a person can use hands, can use legs, can use the ground form position. So it was a better form of fighting, and also it was the new venture for fighting, and also it was the leading growing sports during that time. That's what Joe Rogan said, and this came out to be true later on in the years. And during this time, Joe Rogan was doing the a halftime comedy, and also he was doing the UFC commentating. But he came to realize that UFC didn't earn him a lot of money, because UFC was giving him around $1,000 per week, and comedy was giving him $2,000 per week. So he decided it was better to venture into comedy than to venture into UFC, because UFC was still a small company and it was a startup company. So later on, after 2 years, he quitted the UFC and decided now to venture to comedy. But later on, the UFC were able to convince him to get back to UFC and commentate. And after getting him back, it was a nice career, and also it propelled him even better. That's when now in 2000 he got the show which will make his life and also make him propel, and that show was called Fear Factor. I don't know if you've watched the show Fear Factor. It was a very popular show during the 2000 years, the year of 2000 and 2005, 2006, and also even its shows were being replayed later on in the years 2010 over there, 2013 over there. Their shows were being also being replayed, and this was a very hit show where most of the people liked this particular show. But Joe Rogan didn't have hopes on this show. When he heard about this particular show, he thought it would be an epic failure, because he didn't believe that anybody eating something which was eating millipedes, eating centipedes, eating snails for money wouldn't be a good TV show, which that was the thinking of Joe Rogan. But to his disbelief, the show was able to hit, and the show got the large amount of publicity which Joe Rogan needed. And that's when now Joe Rogan was able to film this show between 2000 and 2005. And he filmed around 158 episodes, 148 over there. He filmed around 148, 158 episodes. And these episodes were very famous. And later on in the years, during the year of 2004, Joe Rogan started becoming bored with this particular TV show, because the TV show, what mainly it did was repeating other seasons, and also it was very predictable, because most of the seasons were repeated, and most of the games which were being played were repeated. So it was very repetitive, and also it wasn't very captivating, because they should have brought new ideas. And Joe Rogan started getting bored with this particular TV show, and that's when now later on in the next year in 2005, that particular TV show got banned, because it did a stunt which was very it wasn't it was the stunt was it was not the they did a very life-threatening stunt later on in the year of 2005. So in 2005, the show was discontinued, but after the show was discontinued, Joe Rogan was very satisfied, be it on his pocket and also be it publicity. He was known everywhere, and he couldn't now worry about fans, because he had the amount of money which will make him not to worry for the rest of his life when he performed this particular TV show. And during the year of 2005, after ending that particular TV show, now he decided to look for other ventures where he will be able to continue his career. And that's when now he started doing part-time comedy. and he hired some particular people and also cameramen to do his own comedy. And that's when now later on he did it for 2005 to 2009 over there. And that's when now in 2009 he decided to do a particular podcast. And this podcast, he did it and also started it with his friend called Brian. And that's was in the year of 2009 in December, where this particular podcast was, the first videos were uploaded in the internet, where it was in the Joe Rogan's website called joerogan.net. So after uploading this particular videos to Joe Rogan .net, he got around 200 views in this particular video, and it wasn't the amount of views which you would want, but it was a good initial for the first time. And that's when now he decided to do, and it consisted of them just talking for a period of more than even 1 hour, 2 hours. Their initial idea was them together talking for all of these episodes for more than even 30 episodes. But later on, after doing 2 episodes, they realized that there wasn't so much to talk about. That's when on their third episode, they decided to bring a new speaker. And on their fourth episode, they decided to bring a new speaker. And that's when now the idea and also the form of Joe Rogan podcast, which we see today, came about, because the first 2 episodes, they exhausted everything they talked about. So Joe Rogan now, he started becoming famous because he started bringing people which were famous into the podcast, and this boosted his publicity. Later on in the year of 2013 over there, Joe Rogan now decided to put all his videos to on YouTube, because YouTube was growing also, and he decided to put a 3 hour long video on YouTube. No one was doing this, and also it was a new thing which was on YouTube. And after him doing this, it was very good for him, and also it was good for his publicity, because his videos now became more easily accessible on YouTube. And that's when now in the first year he had around 100,000 subscribers on YouTube in the year of 2014 over there. In the second year he got around 150,000, and that's when now he started growing larger and also larger and larger. And that's when now in 2017 he was able now to reach his 1,000 episodes on the Joe Rogan experience. And during 2008 over there, it took him around 8 months now to give his podcast a new name, which was the Joe Rogan Experience. And the experience came from a particular album of Jimi Hendrix Experience, and that's where he was able to get this name of Joe Rogan Experience from. So during the year of 2017, the podcast was able to shoot its 1,000 videos, which had consisted of famous people like Neil and Tyson, Mike Tyson, and also other famous people that were shot on this particular podcast. People like Joe Diaz, very funny people like Stephen O. And later on in the years, they shot with Jordan Peterson, they shot with Elon Musk, they shot with very, very famous people on these particular shows, be it billionaires, be it movie actors, be it comedians. They shot with every type of person, be it it was another person, be it any type of person, they shot it in this particular show. And something which was very different with Joe Rogan interview, the interview was uncut, unlike the other interviews which you get from TVs, where they cut and also remove the bad parts of those actors. The Joe Rogan Experience show will let you see the true colors of a particular celebrity, and also let you see the mind of a celebrity for more than even 2 hours and also 3 hours. You will just see him being able to talk out extensively everything he wanted to talk. You'll see what he's talking on the Joe Rogan Experience, and also you'll be able to know your celebrity even more. That's when now later on Joe Rogan got a deal by Spotify, and this deal was around $100 million, where Spotify offered him that he could be able to upload his videos on Spotify. And that's when now Joe Rogan accepted. Later on in the year of 2020, he discontinued him him uploading videos on YouTube, and that's now when he shifted where his videos will be uploaded on Spotify. And after uploading on Spotify, they'll be cut up into smaller pieces, where those smaller pieces will be uploaded on YouTube, on Joe Rogan's YouTube. So that's the story of Joe Rogan, and that's the story of how he was able to become the big person which we know him of today. And he's still also a UFC commentator sometimes. And I hope you like this video, and please subscribe to this channel. And till I meet you next time, I